Chapter 4. On the flood and the contents of the ark. The first pair knew each other and bore children, and they raised up sons and daughters, and Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Genesis 3:20. But when men had multiplied and fallen into an abyss of evil and a great multitude of sins, God set about to wash clean the world with water and to wipe man off the face of the earth. At the same time, he did not abandon his portion. Rather, he preserved Noah and his sons and daughters on the ark. Again, the ark was a type of the Theotokos, and Noah of Christ, and the men with Noah were a first fruit of the portion of the Jews, of those who would believe in Christ, while the wild beasts and the animals and birds and reptiles constituted a type of the Gentiles. Thus, accordingly, if the ark after the flood contained Noah, and Mary the Theotokos contained the incarnate one, God and man, yet the ark saved only Noah and those who were with him, while Christ on the other hand delivered both his ark and all the world from the flood of sin, from the slavery of the law, and from death. After the flood, though, men were once again brought down to ignorance of God, and at the same time once more became stiff-necked and haughty, because they were of one mouth, that is, had a single language and the same words. So they began to build a tower and tried to climb up into heaven, imagining within themselves yet again that they were God's equals. Genesis 11:1. When God therefore was about to confuse their languages and thus divide and scatter them throughout the earth, since they had become many members from Adam's side, yet were one body thanks to their single language, he once again took from them a portion for himself, that is the rib. And then when he had turned the remaining body into many portions of members, he scattered them and called them who were wholly ignorant of him, Gentiles. His own portion he named Israel, which means the one who sees God. This was Abraham, in whom the seed of faith and of the knowledge of God was preserved thenceforth by hereditary succession, and to whom God appeared and said, "Go forth from your country and your kindred, to the land that I will show you." Genesis 12:1. To Abraham also he gave the circumcision, revealing it to him as a kind of sign and seal. Further, he swore to him that his seed would be multiplied like the stars in heaven and like the sand which lines the seashore. After this, God appeared again to him and said, "Know of a surety that your descendants will be sojourners in a land that is not yours." Genesis 15:13. Informing him before time of Joseph's descent into Egypt together with his father Jacob and his brothers. From the latter, the portion would multiply and become a great nation, whom God through Moses would lead out of Egypt, feasting them beforehand with the lamb, which was the antitype of the true lamb. Then, after he had both parted the sea, and led them across and had brought them through the desert, while feeding them there for 40 years, they became the Lord's portion, his people, Jacob, Israel, his allotted inheritance. Deuteronomy 32:9. They had thus the circumcision as a seal, and all were circumcised. By this means, as noted, the Lord's portion was recognizable in that, like sheep in a flock belonging to the emperor, each of them bore the circumcision as a kind of brand on his hidden member. And this was so arranged by God's wisdom, in order that they not be confused with the other sheep, that is, with the Gentiles, whose ignorance of God had reduced them to the level of wild beasts and unreasoning animals. So why was it not prescribed that the brand be on some other part of the body rather than on this one? Because it is from this member that the seed comes forth, and the fleshly birth of every man is effected. In addition, God sketches for us by this means a figure of the whole man stripped of the flesh, such that by this sign the Israelites might become both recognizable as children of the flesh, and provide a type of the spiritual circumcision of those children of the Spirit, who would later be begotten without emission or sexual intercourse or corruption. Thus, when the latter circumcision appears, the former will at the same time cease, and each of the sheep in the circumcision of the flesh shall be branded instead with the blood of Christ. That is, with the circumcision not made by hands, as St. Paul says, and with the putting off of the flesh, cross-reference Colossians 2:11, by which, I take it he means, being earthly minded. Being thus circumcised mystically, we yet become aware of it by the perception and knowledge of our soul.